Have we had a conversation like this, anyone? We know him, but like with Tyrath? We know him, but we aren't really, he helped us before, but he mostly does it on a whim. I'm gonna ask this one because I don't understand how is this similar or familiar. Does the whole situation seem familiar to anyone, or is it just me? I beg your pardon? King of Underground says, please excuse my friend. Darren says, he's saying this because you are not the first king to have asked us the same exact question since we arrived in Varathia. Unfortunately, there is no simple way to answer your question. Aiden has been masquerading as a tournament participant ever since the beginning, and he's interacted with several groups so far, including us. Sometimes he helped us, other times he had tried to kill us, so it's difficult to know for sure when he's acting as our ally or not. All we can say is that so far he's proved to be highly unpredictable. I'm sorry, but I'm finding all of this rather hard to believe, the king says. In my opinion, it would be far more likely possibility that you and this creator are conspiring together and you're simply trying to hide this fact from us. No, we are not conspiring or anything, Darren says. The only reason why we came to the city is to kill the king of Allender. Believe me, we're all on the same side here. Are we though? Kate says all of a sudden as we look at the king directly with an accusatory expression on her face. What do you mean? The king asks her. One would assume that an ally would not need to keep sending their lapdogs to keep an eye on us. But your assassin friend Albert over there has been tailing us all day, and I've also heard from Melindra that you've been conducting some rather shady business over these years, involving both assassinations and slave trades, among other things. What is to say that those morally questionable aspects of this society that Aiden was talking about with the overseer in the recording wasn't directly caused by you as well? Fair point, the king says. However, I would still like to point out that slave trade is not seen as morally reprehensible in this continent, regardless of how people may judge these things outside of Varathia. As for the assassinations, there were definitely many of those that were executed on my order, though I would argue that all of these deaths were beneficial to our society in one way or the other. That being said, I cannot prove this to you any more than you can prove it to me that you are not working with Aiden, so it's clear that there can no longer be any more progress made on this front. So what do you propose then? Kate says. My proposition is simple, the king says with a smile. Instead of an alliance based on trust, we should try to form one based on necessity alone. What this means in practice is that both sides will be using each other as much as they can in order to fulfill their goals, but we will not abstain from backstabbing each other if it serves our interests. In other words, anything goes. Frankly, it seems to me that your group may have already been prepared for such a scenario. Isn't that the reason why you're still carrying your backpacks with you, despite the fact that we have had a room prepared for you in a good few hours ago? I suppose you're not entirely wrong, Darren says, but how are we going to deal with the overseer meeting in this case? Does your initial offer still stand? What? I suppose you're not entirely wrong, Darren says, but how are you going to deal with the overseer meeting? Right. My men will still be assembling tomorrow so they can have a talk with the overseer, the king says. This has not changed. What you choose to do with this information, however, is entirely up to you. Right. And says, does this mean that this meeting is over then? We can go back to what we were doing before. Of course, the king says. You continue to roam free in these tunnels like before. I will even order Albert to stop trailing you as a gesture of good faith. Oh, and Peter, next time when you get the idea to escort a guest to one of our restricted areas, be a good lad and inform me about it beforehand, will you? Yes, your highness, Peter says in a resigned tone. Do not worry, your highness, Albert says. I will have a talk with him later in order to straighten things out. I assure you that will not happen again. Very well, the king says. In that case, you're all dismissed. Feel free to contact me at any time if you have anything important to tell me. I'll be here in my throne room for the rest of the day. Duly noted, Darren says. Come on, let's go back to the waiting room. Well, that was quite a talk, Hardrick says as soon as we exit the throne room. Indeed, Darren says, as we are making our way back to the waiting room, it's going to be interesting to see how things will develop from here on out, that's for sure. You think they might try to get rid of us? Hardrick says. I highly doubt that they would, Darren says in a low voice, as he makes sure that Peter and Albert are not within hearing range of us, especially since they suspect us being Aiden's allies. They'd have to be completely mad to risk making him into their enemy without any reason at all. Still, I suggest that we continue this conversation once we get back to the waiting room, because I don't like looking over my shoulder every few seconds to make sure that I'm not being spied on. Once we arrive in the waiting room, we wait until Peter and Albert no longer are inside, then resume our talk in a low enough voice that the other people present in the room cannot hear us. Anyway, Darren says, I'd say that these recent events complicate our situation quite a bit. What do you all recommend we should do? Are we going to keep cooperating with the king, or maybe we should start thinking about going our own separate ways? I don't know what to say, Hardrick says. The information that these rebels can obtain used from their listening devices is pretty useful, to be honest. Agreed, Darren says. The only problem is that we don't know if they keep sharing this sort of stuff with us or not from now on. I think it might be better to keep this alliance going until we can figure out if you're still getting something out of it or not. Kate, what do you say? Do what you want, Kate says. She turns around and starts heading towards one of the exits. I'm going back to my training. Melindra, let's go. Sure, Melindra says as she begins following Kate right behind you. Hey Kate, don't be like that, Darren says. Come on. Kate doesn't react in any way and she continues to walk forward with Melindra following closely behind her. And the two of them disappear into one of the corridors leading out of the waiting room. Yeah, I don't think Kate wants us to cooperate with the king of the underground, Darren says. It's no wonder, Kate says. She is more or less openly declared that she doesn't trust him at all only a few moments ago. Obviously, she's not going to be thrilled at the idea of us maintaining our alliance with him. Yeah, but I wasn't saying we should become buddies with him or anything, Darren said. I was just suggesting that we could try to keep the alliance going for a little while longer until we figure out if we're actually benefiting from it or not. Maybe we could give her some time, Hadrick says. She might change her mind when she clears her head a little, I suppose. Dylan says, alright, let's all continue with what we are doing and we'll meet up again later. Ark, are you up for a second round of aura study? Ark, are you up for a second round of aura study? Okay. Sure, whatever, Arka says. Not like I have anything better to do anyway. Barry, there you are. I hear Layla's father calling out to me as most of my friends are now heading separate directions, continue their previous activities. Layla's father is now approaching me while holding my stat booster in his hand. As soon as he gets close to me and Layla, he stops in his tracks and he extends his hand towards me in order to give me back my device. I wanted to tell you that I'm done working on your stat booster, Layla's father says, so I grab my device from his hand and take a good look at it. However, you should give it a little time before it adjusts to the changes I've made. At the moment, the device isn't functional, but normally it would just start working by itself after a while. If it still doesn't work until tomorrow, I'll take another look at it to make sure that everything's okay. Did you manage to unlock all of the aura stats? How long would it take? Not the unwanted side effects I should worry about. I want to see about the aura stats. Unexpected bonus. Did you manage to unlock all of the aura stats? Yes, the magic sense, bluff and aura hardening stats should all be available to you once your stat device starts working again, Little Father says. Also, I think I should let you know that the stat device are made in such a way that your stat point distribution gets automatically reset when you unlock the hidden aura stats. In other words, as soon as your stat device starts working again, your stats will be at 0 and then you will have to spend all your available points to spend at your leisure once more. Wow, that's amazing, I say. Does this mean that it's possible to reset the stat device multiple times if you hide the aura stats and unlock them again? To be honest, I wouldn't risk it, the father says. These devices are very old and a full stat reset puts a lot of strain on them. That's the reason why you aren't given the option to just remove points from your stats at will after you're already spent them. The only reason why I even let the stat reset happen is because I wasn't given a choice in the matter. But trying to reset the stats multiple times on purpose may well cause some of your points to become unstable. It might even cause your stat device to stop working altogether. My advice is to be happy that no damage has been done with the reset, and to be very careful when you choose what your stats to level up from now on, because you likely won't be getting another chance like this again. Got it, I say. Anything else I should know about? Yes, there was one last thing I wanted to tell you about your device, Layla's father says. When I removed your stat booster from its lock state, the process that is dedicated to converting magical energy into a available stat device was reset, so you will be getting one of your stat points earlier than normal. That also means that you will be getting one less point with your next batch. I think you'd much rather have the stat point available now than later. If I'm not mistaken, your extra point should be available to you as soon as your stat device becomes functional again. Alright, I say as I put the device in my pocket. I'll make sure to keep that in mind. Thank you for your help. You're welcome, Layla's father says. Oh, since you're on the topic of stat boosters, Layla, would you mind coming to my workshop again for a bit? There's one last maintenance check I forgot to do on your stat device. I prefer to do it now. Well, I got some free time. Okay, Layla writes, see you, Barry. See you both later, I say as the two of them start heading toward Dr. Reitzig's workshop. As I look around the room to decide what I'm going to be doing next, one particular corridor catches my attention. It's the corridor that Kate and Melindra walked into when I decided to continue the training. Now that I take a better look, I realize it's not the same corridor as the one we were using to train before the King of Underground called us to his throne room. Why would they choose a different corridor this time? Wouldn't it make much more sense for them to train in a place that is already familiar to them?